What is up, everybody? Happy Election Tuesday. Welcome to the D&D Sports Show. We kind of had a little mishap yesterday go on, so we were not able to record, so we're coming at you live today. We are going to be going over the wild weekend of college football, NFL games. We're going to go back about last night's Monday Night Football game, and then we are also going to close this out. And what better way to close out the election day than to talk about some of the finalist awards in the MLB and vote on who we think each award should go to. So we're kicking it off, going straight into some college football. I mean, what do we talk about this Halloween? I mean, we called the West Virginia coming out and beating Kansas State. I mean, did this weekend hold up to your expectations?
Yeah, I think that this weekend was definitely kind of a I don't know, I guess a surprise, a little bit of an eye-opening weekend for some teams. We saw Ohio State kind of be human for a little bit. Obviously, I know that they gave up some fourth quarter points and made that score a lot closer than what it was. Justin Fields had another amazing day. There's a couple of other teams who really showed what they were made of. Cincinnati, like, blew the doors off of Memphis. um, Mizzou, showed the Mizzou that we were anticipating going into Florida. Florida had that COVID, I guess the COVID bye, you can call it. Michigan, I feel bad because unfortunately they couldn't hear us talk about this on Friday, but we were dogging Michigan State for being a terrible team losing to Rutgers, and
Yeah.
I think that it just proves that anybody can beat anybody any day. They played well. Rocky Lombardi, while he wasn't efficient, found a way to lead the Spartans to victory. North Carolina, we get every week we talk about them. They collapse, and obviously, I mean, it just
Wasn't one of their best games. I mean, they played solid up until that fourth quarter.
well, I mean, even in the fourth quarter, they outscored their opponent. I really think the game was lost in that first half. Anytime you give up, or you don't have the lead going at halftime, it's kind of a tough one to overmount. A couple other games to note: Coastal Carolina. We knew they were gonna. We didn't.
Cruising.
We didn't know they were gonna cruise to victory. We knew they were gonna win, but we didn't. We knew that they were going to handle business. Oklahoma's offense really showed up this weekend.
Indiana beat Rutgers, which really we expected that.
I do think this Indiana team is a lot better than what people think. Their offense needs to catch up with their defense, because their offense did stall out a lot. Uh, I would want to point out that both of our upset picks did come true. You picked West Virginia over Kansas State, and I picked Texas over Oklahoma. They made it
What a game!
interesting.
What a game that was, though. I mean,
I mean, it was both games honestly were, kind of unexpected. A lot of people had Oklahoma State rolling, I mean, credit to Spencer Sanders. I'll be the first one to admit it. He played a hell of a football game. That defense of Oklahoma State just could not handle the Texas offense. The rushing attack, caught up to him. Special teams, that kickoff return in the third quarter by Deshaun Jameson was kind of a real, I would say, a momentum shifter because they just scored a touchdown. They're going up 11 in the third quarter, sitting pretty, and just to answer like that was really kind of a tough one. Um, but it's something that you got to overcome, especially in the Big 12. We knew the Big 12 was just going to keep beating each other. Um, they're just going to keep beating each other up. We already pretty much established that there's no Big 12 team that's going to make it. But a couple of teams who are still finding ways to win. BYU, obviously they are sitting at 7-0. Looking ahead at their remaining schedule, they have a big game this week against Boise State. So that'll be a fun one on this Friday. I believe they play on Friday. But it's going to be a good game. It's going to be primetime game on FS1. So look forward to watching that. Um, we also have um, well, like we already talked about Coastal Carolina. But what about this Bama team? I mean, Mississippi State. You know how the mighty have fallen. Mike Leach mic'd up week 1 against LSU was pure gold. And then just since then, it's just I mean, this
They
offense has just fell off. Like, we don't know this offense. Like, there's literally talks there was talks to start that KJ Costello was gonna be in the Heisman race, and their offenses just fell off. 14 points against Arkansas, 2 points against Kentucky, 14 against Texas A&M, and an a big old goose egg against Alabama.
I
I
mean, when
mean,
you look at it that way, Mississippi State going in against the Kentucky team that we thought was going to play a lot better this season, but now they're starting to get trounced week in and week out. So what that really doesn't say much to the you know how good this Mississippi State team could have been. We thought everybody thought this team was going to come out put up 400, 500 yards of offense each week and come away with some really good close wins. But now we're seeing the exact opposite. They can't hold on to the football. They can't score, and their defense is just not being able to keep up with other teams' offense. I mean, when you don't have an offense that's scoring points, how can you expect to win football games?
yeah, exactly. And I want your opinion on this. So, I the other team in the SEC, we talked about Alabama's dominance. I with Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence sitting out this weekend. I do believe that Mac Jones is the front runner for the Heisman right now. After another monster game. But another team that I really think you need to look at is this Georgia team. And this Georgia defense is one of the best in the country. But what we have seen happen with this Georgia team is their offense is starting to struggle. And it's started against Alabama not being able to put up enough points to stick in that game. And I really think, honestly, it starts at the quarterback position. And I really think if you look into it, it might be time to give JT Daniels a shot. He did have um, a pretty bad injury at USC that unfortunately shortened his time there. But I think that if Stetson Bennett keeps up the way he's going, he had 2 picks in the last game.
And a fumble.
Really didn't give a team a chance to win. That defense, thankfully, only gave up 3 points. But especially against Florida, you're going to have to get offense. I mean, you saw against Mizzou, Florida, and Kyle Trask. I still stick by Kyle Trask as one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the SEC. So you're going to have to do something because this is your last big hurdle before you have kind of a cruise at the end of the season against Mizzou, Mississippi State, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. So you have to
Also,
win here. This is the peak of your schedule. If you win this, I mean, you're sitting there 1 loss. All it takes is a Notre Dame loss to a bad team. I mean, Notre Dame still has to play Clemson this week, and I mean, obviously, one of those teams has to lose. So you're sitting there at Georgia. If you win out, you're probably going to be the 4 seed.
now this Georgia team is getting kind of lucky going into a Florida team that now has 3 suspensions going into next week due to the brawl with Missouri last weekend. Um, Now, with that being said, this Georgia team is very one-dimensional right now. It's how it's always been at Georgia. It's run the ball, run the ball, run it down their throats. Now, that being said, when you have Zamir White running 136 yards per game at least, you don't have to really worry about that. But yes, we talked about Stetson Bennett throwing for 2 interceptions. Fortunately, not losing his fumble, but still fumbling the ball. These are key things you have to fix going up into this next game because honestly, you can't sleep on Mizzou. Mizzou has been playing pretty well. They were in the game up until the end of the first half. Then that brawl happened, and then the game changed completely. And then Florida kind of just put their foot on Mizzou's throat and just kind of walked away with it. But that's not the normal Mizzou team. This Mizzou team has played really well against better opponents. I mean, you just can't just walk. You can't get look past them. You have to worry about them at the moment. And if this Georgia team doesn't figure out this offense, and they are heavily relying on that run game, they could be in trouble after this next week.
two teams to watch this next weekend. You know, whenever you start at it, obviously you have to look at this Clemson team who really showed who they were. They had a gut check. I mean, going down 28-13 at half, coming out with a true freshman quarterback. I mean, not a lot of people gave him a chance, but DJ stepped up and he found a way to will his team back. He will be the
He's
starter next
Yep.
week against Notre Dame. With Trevor Lawrence obviously sitting out 2 weeks for COVID protocol. Um, I mean, I don't know if you got to watch this game at all, but this kid can straight out play. I mean, not only doing it with his arm, but doing it on the run. I mean, 4th and 1, everybody thinks you're handing it off to the best running back in the nation, or one of the best running backs in the nation. And he pulls the ball and runs it for 38 yards for a touchdown. I mean, I
Give
mean
credit
the
where
kid.
credit's due. I mean,
Exactly. I mean, he was a gut check the first half. He was efficient in the first half, but the coaches really limited the play calls. They were trying to, they didn't necessarily force the ball down the field until he got a little bit more comfortable. And he really stepped up when his team needed him the most. And I mean, I really see this as a Ohio State kind of situation where you have multiple quarterbacks on the team who can win you games. There's not going to be a controversy, but whenever um when I believe it was who was it that got hurt? Was it JT Barrett that got hurt and then Cardell Jones stepped up to win games?
yeah, at Ohio State
Yes, yeah,
3 years ago.
essentially this Notre Dame game right here is a playoff game. If they win, there's looking ahead at their schedule, they're not going to really lose a game. They play Florida State, who Florida State has been struggling this year to really get anything going. You have Pitt, who is also struggling to get going. Um, and then Virginia Tech is probably their biggest challenge remaining, but I still think it's a very winnable game, especially if Trevor Lawrence is back. Um, but one more thing to mention about this game: shout out to Travis Etienne. He is the ACC leading rusher. He did pass the record during the game, so honestly, he's had a tremendous career. He's going to, I think, transition very well to the next level, and but I think it'll be interesting to see, if this Clemson team keeps staying hot and the running game picks up, it's going to be like it could potentially be the top 4 in the Heisman race could be from 2 teams. I mean, looking at Clemson and
Right.
Alabama, Mac Jones, Damian Harris, and
Travis Etienne.
Travis Etienne and
Trevor
Trevor
Lawrence.
Lawrence. I mean, it's kind of whoever has the bigger last 3-4 weeks. I really think so.
All right, now 2 games I want to touch on real quick, just while we have time. LSU continues to struggle. I mean, Auburn put up 48 points. Bo Nix finally had a good game for him. Um, I mean, what's ailing this LSU team after? Is it just championship hangover still?
I
Really?
think I
You
think
believe that?
it's losing all their playmakers. I mean, you go into a year and you don't have anyone returning. It's not never easy. I mean, you lost your quarterback, your running back, your leading 2 receivers. It's not easy. You lost the core of that defense. I mean, I didn't really expect a whole lot from this season, but I did not expect this much of a collapse. Also, real quick, wanted to point out, I apologize to all of my Bama fans out there. It's Najee Harris, not Damian Harris. I just saw that. I am thinking of the running back for the Patriots that came from Alabama, but it is Najee Harris. I don't know if it's any relation, but probably knowing the breeding ground that is Alabama running backs is probably related.
Oh, no shade, no shade.
I'm not. No, I'm not saying it wasn't. It
I'm
wasn't
just
an Alabama joke. It was just. It was
okay.
just. It was just a fact.
Yeah, it is. But the second game, I don't know if you got a chance to watch this game. I watched a little bit, and I was amazed at this. Louisiana Tech versus the University of Alabama Birmingham, I believe. It went
Oh,
into
baby.
yeah, it went to 2 overtimes with Louisiana Tech pulling it out at the last minute. Something I just want to look at is these were 2 very good teams going into this contest. I mean, Just a complete back and forth game, a wild pick six to happen for Louisiana Tech. I mean, he picked the ball off, was on his way down, flipped the ball backwards to another cornerback, and the cornerback ran it in for a pick six. If that's not teamwork, I don't know what is. But this was a wild and fun game to watch. I was flipping through games on Saturday, and I happened to come across this, and I decided to watch it because it was such a close game. And man, am I glad I did. This was an incredible game to watch, and I just wanted to point that out since it was just kind of one of those back and forth games, and we didn't see a lot. We only saw a couple of those this week. There was a lot of blowouts going on this week.
Yeah, you got to give some, you got to give some love to the Conference USA. This UAB team has a couple of credible losses, on their schedule, especially if this Louisiana Tech team keeps winning. Both teams have really lost to good teams. So, it'll be interesting to see who comes out of the Conference USA, specifically the West, where they both play.
Okay, well, do we have any other notables to mention? Oh, besides the number 9 Wisconsin game getting canceled, I don't know what they plan to do with that due to the shortened season already. If they're just going to put off the game or they intend on playing it, we will keep you updated with that. But for now, it just looks like they're just skipping it.
And one last thing I forgot to mention. Big news out of Maryland. I did trash old Tagovailoa last week for the real stinker of a game that he put up. Obviously, I know they're playing Northwestern, who Northwestern historically has a good defense. But he showed up. He made some early mistakes, but he came back, found a way to win, and shout out to him for getting his first career victory.
I mean, what a better weekend for that family than this.
Hold on, I'll get to that in a little bit whenever we get to the NFL. It
Well,
wasn't a very good weekend for the other brother.
it wasn't a good weekend.
I no, we'll just leave it at that. We'll talk about it in a minute. But let's transition. With that being said, let's transition to the professional level and
Yeah.
review this wild and wacky
Halloween
week
weekend.
8. Um, well, let's just start at the top. We'll start with the early slated games. I don't know if you got to watch it or not, but I did get to watch it. The Bills Patriots game. The Patriots are finding new ways to lose games. I mean, as a Bills fan, it
You
wasn't
hate to see
pretty.
it.
We take a win any way we get. Um, it's crazy to think that that you know, we honestly it shouldn't have been this close. Our offense really struggled in the first half to put up points, and I think that really started. It kind of just matriculated from the top. Um, you know, Josh Allen definitely made some rough mistakes, but I know that they really relied on the run game because they want to establish that. They know that we can throw the ball 40 times in a game, but we have to establish a running game, which we did, I think, in this game with Zach Moss having the 2 rushing touchdowns. You have Josh Allen having 1, and then Devin Singletary running for 86 yards. It's a start, and I think that was very important for us to just go out there and not rely on Josh Allen to win a game for us. The defense came up strong, and I really think this Buffalo defense is going to keep getting better as they stay healthy because they have to just stay healthy. Um, you know, it's a very uphill battle. This week we're going to be facing one of the best offenses in the league and the Seahawks. So I mean, it's going to be a fun weekend this weekend.
I do like your tandem you have up in Buffalo. I mean, Devin Singletary's good, getting you there, and then Zach Moss has that physical running ability where he can just stick it to you, run inside the blocks, and just running through people, and that's how he got both his touchdowns were inside the 10, and he was able to just physically get into the end zone. Josh Allen had a couple mistakes. I mean, he's kind of dropping back down to earth after watching him the first 3 weeks of the season throw up monster numbers and pass the ball 40 times a game. But leave it to Cam Newton to do Cam Newton things in the fourth quarter and not protect that football. Where you are taught in Pee Wee, you hold the football on the outside, on the opposite side you're running, on the outside, so they can't strip sack you. And what does he do? He just decides to willy nilly hold the ball in his right hand. And kudos to the that Buffalo defense for getting in there and punching that ball out, securing the win. I mean, Cam Newton is playing terrible right now, and Bill Belichick wants to stick with him through the whole season. I mean, that's a good way to get a good draft pick. If I'm being honest, this is not the Cam Newton of old, and I don't think he's going to turn the season around at all for this Patriots team.
Yeah, and it was an outstanding play by Justin Zimmer. This guy was 2 weeks ago was playing on our practice squad. Giving Josh Allen a look on defense. So it's good to see somebody who isn't one of the big names on our team, and we did really well. Especially obviously our run defense was still struggling today, but we're also missing our starting strong safety as well as playing with a hurt middle linebacker is never easy. So with that being said, Bills team's going to be interesting to watch. I think this kind of proved that it's a two-horse race in the AFC East. Don't give up on the Dolphins. The Dolphins have a pretty, I mean, they basically have the same schedule as the Bills, so they're just going to have to get hot and stay hot. But let's go to a team who is kind of trending downwards. Um, you know, big start to the season. A tough loss to Pittsburgh last week, and all of a sudden, this Titans team is struggling against a Bengals team. Who I apologize to Bengals fans for not even giving Cincinnati a
The
chance in this
kid,
game.
the
Uh,
kid.
I mean, yes, Joe Burrow had a very good, efficient game. But I want to start this defense. Really, I mean, from the opening possession, they're. I always think that when it comes to Bengals defenses, they always bend, don't break. Has always been their mantra. All those years that they were, you know, good competing with the Steelers, with Andy Dalton and everything, in his prime years. It's always bend don't break. They had the early interception, forced a missed field goal. Ultimately, I think that that's going to be the key for the Cincinnati team to win because Joe Burrow is gonna keep you in games. Um, He's not going to try to do too much, as you saw. I mean, he made one of the most outstanding plays I've seen. He escaped like four people and threw it like for like a 25-yard gain. And this Joe Burrow T Higgins combination is going to be fun to watch for the foreseeable future.
And I want to touch on that real quick. Early in the season, when you saw the Bengals struggling, you didn't see a good Bengals defense. You saw Joe Burrow trying to force the ball and be that guy. You know, the one you can put everything on his shoulders and he can come through every time. He was trying to force the ball in, and he was forcing passes that shouldn't have been made, which were causing them to lose games. Game one, he game winning drive down the field, they missed the field goal. That's not on him. Game two, same thing. He throws a miss an ill pass. Game over. Now that their defense is showing up and coming into these games and playing well, he doesn't have to worry about forcing everything on his shoulders and forcing the ball in places that he might not be ready to throw in yet. He's laid back. He looks more relaxed. He looks comfortable with this offense now. And I said this already. I do think this team is going to trend up. I think they will finish 500 this year.
It is very possible. You have matchups against Washington, New York, Miami, Dallas, and then a game against Houston towards the end of the year. Which I mean, if they win all of those, there is a chance that they come out with say 6 or 7 victories. But they do have a tough one this week. We'll see what if this team has a hangover from playing. They have to go to the Steel City. So we will see how that goes for them. Let's just get into the next game though. The next game is
The
well,
stinker of the week.
I mean, yeah. Well, that's a really a good way to put it. Um,
Or
you
the
know,
biggest letdown of the week? I mean,
I mean, this
we can we
Browns
can go
team,
we can go on with this.
the Browns team, obviously missing two key players on the offensive side with Odell Beckham and as well as Nick Chubb, but
And
I do
Austin Hooper.
and Austin Hooper, yes, as well. I forgot about him, but I mean, it was a real stinker of a game. Really, nothing really positive came out for either side in this game. The Raiders did just enough to get it done, especially that fourth quarter. Derek Carr led the ultimately the game winning drive. Um, so, I mean, other than that, there wasn't a whole lot. Cody Parkey did Cody Parkey things and missed a potential making it a one position game towards the end of the fourth quarter. So,
We finally saw Josh Jacobs run for over 100 yards again. I mean,
I'm
that's been a while or a long
yeah.
time coming for us.
I mean, it took him 31 carries though is the issue, and that's not a sustainable number for him to do. I mean, he only averaged 4 yards a game or a run, so it's going to be something that they have to work on. I mean, Derek Derek Carr has to be better with the ball. 15 for 24 for 115 yards. That offense has the capability to be a top offense in that division. I mean, that offense beat Kansas City, so they're gonna have to figure out what exactly went wrong. Um, it's just something that they're gonna have to build off of, and they definitely have the remaining schedule to get a late run and try to get one of those wild card spots.
Agreed.
And I think this Browns team is trending down, and I think it's gonna be a rough road, especially with the Bengals team kind of getting hot and them having to play the Ravens and the Steelers. Um, as well as the Titans. It's going to be interesting. Those
I
three
think.
games.
Oh,
This
sorry.
this no this I mean they still have a chance to make an AFC playoff spot. They do have a lot of weak games. They have the Texans, Eagles, Jaguars, and Giants and Jets. So there's 5 games right there. If they win those 5, I mean, I think 10 wins, they'll be a wild card.
Yeah, and I do think we saw what Cleveland is capable of doing if all the conditions are right. But it hasn't been that way for a long time for them, and I think we just saw what they are capable of, but it's not going to be um, sustainable for them. And I once again, I don't think Baker is the key. I don't think he's the piece to put the Browns together. Um, I just I'm not a Browns fan, and I don't think they will be able to keep a good offense together. I mean, their defense is not terrible. They're able to hold certain offenses to valuable numbers to where they let their offense to score. Now, yes, those offenses do have to score 35, 40 points a game for that to happen, but they are able to do it. But this offense is just way too inconsistent for me to even rely on them one week in and week out.
Speaking of historically bad franchises, let's just go into the next one. This Colts team, their defense, we keep talking week in and week out, is going to keep them in games. They're going to give Philip Rivers a chance to win, and obviously they proved that this week against uh, this Detroit team. And this Detroit team obviously had a really hot start. We thought, even with their close losses, that they would have a chance to really solidify themselves as a contender in that division. Ultimately, just from the start, they really couldn't get anything going offensively in the first half. Um, I don't know. This is just a good defensive win for the
Um,
Colts. I mean, it helps that you get a pick six in the second half to kind of ice the game, and fumbles, and I mean, I just think this is just proving that this Indianapolis defense is for real.
yes, but I also think this offense kind of clicked a little bit in this game. I mean, you saw Philip Rivers, who was able to throw for 262 yards and 3 touchdowns, something he hasn't really been able to do with this offense over the course of the season. And Jordan Wilkins showed up for the running game, which was somebody we didn't expect to. I mean, Jonathan Taylor had 22 yards, Nyheim Hines had 8, and for a third string running back coming in and dominating this game, it's good to see. They just have to figure out what is going to work as receivers go. I mean, when you have one of your running backs as your top targeted receiver, I think you need to figure something else out. I mean, T.Y. Hilton has been abysmal this year. Where is that, top 5 pick where we saw 2, 3 years ago? I mean, he had 2 receptions for 9 yards and only 2 targets. They have to get something going for this receiving core if they want to compete. This defense cannot win them through playoffs. I don't think it's possible for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that this team should have been big buyers in the and at the trade deadline. This is one of the teams who I want to talk about. Really kind of upsetting not to see them not maybe move after somebody like a Golden Tate or somebody who has a receiver with an expiring contract this year. Trying to bolster that receiving core. Um, but it can't all fall, on the receivers either. Philip Rivers has lost the ability to throw the deep ball with as much accuracy and zip as he has in the past. Obviously, with him aging, it's not necessarily his fault. But I do think that this team is kind of on cruise control the rest of the season. I do think that their schedule, after these next 4 weeks, it kind of drops off. Obviously they have Ravens, Titans, Packers, Titans. So they have to keep that defense is going to have to be tough the next few games, in order for them to have a chance to win this division.
Yeah, and I mean this division in itself is really not that strong in comparison to the other ones. I mean, even if you look at the AFC South and the NFC North, you have two 5-2 teams in the AFC South, and then a 5-2 and a 5-3 team in the NFC North. These are probably two out of the three worst divisions in football. Not mentioning the NFC least currently. But this indie team is good when their defense is on. I just think they're expecting too much if they expect this defense to carry them through the rest of the season. So Philip Rivers needs to figure it out. Maybe spend some extra practice, get some extra reps with other receivers, but they need to do something soon. Otherwise, it's downhill for them. But what about the stunner of the week? And by stunner, I mean Dalvin Cook beating the Green Bay Packers single-handedly.
Yeah, we knew that Dalvin Cook was good, and we knew that he was definitely a top 5 running back in the NFL. But I don't think really anybody saw going into this week. Obviously, the big story coming in this week is the Packers didn't do anything to bolster their defense, and they didn't do anything to give Aaron Rodgers another weapon. And that's another team that I think that they just need to get a new owner. It was proven during their game that they were in dire need of help on the defensive side and run stopping, as well as they have to have another offensive weapon because when they could key in on Devonte Adams, obviously he did have a 3 touchdown game, but there are 5 yard, 1 yard, and 7 yard touchdowns. They were not able to really stretch the ball down the field as much as Aaron Rodgers teams that have been successful have. When your tight end is your leading receiver, it's usually not a good sign. Also, the running game without Aaron Jones definitely is not necessarily as reliable. So hopefully Aaron Jones makes a speedy recovery. Um, and then, this defense of Minnesota, found a way to not Minnesota this game because it did get kind of close towards the end. But they found a way to, sack Aaron Rodgers on the last play of the game and recover that fumble, even though it wouldn't have mattered. They almost got the tuck rule, but it was the wrist just ever so slightly was going forward. Wasn't the arm. So shout out to Minnesota for coming out of I thought it was when Dalvin Cook did the Lambeau leap into nobody. I knew right then and there that Minnesota wasn't messing around.
Yeah, I mean, this Vikings team, what a way to come out though. I mean, when everybody just chalks it up to like this is going to be an easy week, and maybe that's what the Packers thought going into this game. But when they showed up and they got hit right in the mouth in the beginning, they realized that Minnesota was in this game to win. And Dalvin Cook definitely took it to Minnesota. I mean, Green Bay. But like you said, Green Bay has to figure out what to do on defense. We went from a good defense to a terrible defense, in my opinion. This Green Bay team has not been able to stop the run. They allow tight ends the second most points in the league. It's an abysmal showing, and Aaron Rodgers is trying his hardest to carry this Green Bay team. With Aaron Jones out, it makes it a lot more difficult. But they needed help on their defense, and I don't think with the trade deadline ending today or ending an hour ago, actually, they didn't pick up any key pieces that could have helped, you know, their defense out, or even pick up an offensive line or a guard to help keep Aaron Rodgers from getting sacked so many times.
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to, I'd like to pick a drive to really sum up the game. And I think if you look at you know, that first drive of the second half for the Packers, starting off with a 3-yard run, an 8-yard pass with that ultimately got brought back for offensive holding, and then a 45-yard gain to Tanyan. And you're sitting there at the 37-yard line. You really have all the momentum, and instead of coming out, possibly running the ball, getting some positive yards, they go 4 straight passes, none of which were targeted to Devontae Adams or Tanyan. Um, they're gonna have to find that third option. They should have picked one up. They should have been really, they should have been in the Will Fuller sweepstakes. Pat McAfee talked about it in his show yesterday about how he was upset that they didn't even try to make a deal. And I think that the owner of the Packers needs to be fired, and they need to get a new one because they just wasted Aaron Rodgers' career. I'm gonna
Agreed.
be straight up right here. I'm not. This isn't the first time I've said it, but that dude is way too talented. They should not have drafted Jordan Love. Love Jordan Love. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. Not a great quarterback. Not an outstanding quarterback. Not a Hall of Fame quarterback. Not even a Pro Bowler. He's going to be a good quarterback eventually, but they don't need that now. They needed to draft. I don't even know. They could have traded up, and obviously they traded up to get in the first round. They could have drafted a defensive end, somebody to get pressure, another cornerback to pair up with Jair Alexander. There's so many things that this team needs. They could have drafted one of the receivers. This has had such a deep wide receiver class, but it's really showing now um, for this Packers team, especially getting exposed by two really, I'd say of the two of the better defenses, and they barely beat this Vikings team in week one as well. If you remember, it was a 43-34 game, so it was a close game in that one as well. And Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be able to outscore everyone, especially this next week against the 49ers. You have a backup quarterback in the 49ers, so your defense, all they have to do is play good, and they're going to find a way to win this game this next week. So
Yep.
Packers are big losers in the trade deadline sweepstakes. But let's
And
move on.
they
Let's
get a
move.
grade F
Yes,
for
yeah.
failure.
Yes. Let's move on though to the big winner of the trade deadline. Obviously the rich are just getting richer. You know, a man who weeks ago, um, or last week, ultimately got crushed by Kansas City. A man named Avery Williamson. For those of you who don't know, Avery Williamson was on the 0-8 Jets, who had just come off of I would say it was a lot closer than the score. Or I mean, it was a lot more ugly than the score actually showed. Obviously, Kansas City got off
It
to a
was
slow
so
start.
ugly that
They got
Kansas
off
City
to a
couldn't
slow
score.
start. It wasn't the prettiest showing for that first half of that offense. But ultimately, they came in, figured it out, and found a way to pick up the victory. But Avery Williamson, for those of you who don't know, like I was saying, was on the 0-8 team. Is now a Pittsburgh Steeler, and talk about a big
Moving on
swing.
up.
I mean, going from a dumpster fire that is 0-8 to the NFL leading Pittsburgh Steelers sitting there at 7-0. You know, Avery Williams is going to be is a huge addition to this team. He is a really good tackler and as well as a really good pass defense, so he will fit their need to fill in the opening that was left by was it who got hurt? Somebody got hurt for them.
Off the top of my head, I can't look.
Yeah. But anyway, moral of the story is, Jets. There's not a whole lot to say about the game. Patrick Mahomes did Patrick Mahomes thing. They ran a fake punt against the Jets, which I think is bull crap. All right, you're playing a really crappy team. I don't care if it's a professional league. Have some class, Andy Reid, and
Okay,
just. I mean, there's no reason. I mean, the punter had a better passer rating than Sam Darnold going into the game, so there's no reason to run the score up like that. Real bush league move by a veteran coach in Andy Reid.
and it didn't stop there. Do you remember the Jets swag surfing? That was their like mantra for the past couple of years. I don't know if you actually knew that, but this game got so ugly that Kansas City trolled them by playing it while they were on offense the whole time in the second half. Like it was just this game became a mockery super quick, and it was not. I didn't know what happened, why Kansas City decided to go this way, but this was just adding insult to injury. I mean, this team already understood that they're just trying to get through the season at this point, and this was just not classy for especially when we're supposed to have a high respect for Andy Reid and this team. I don't know, that knocked them down a little bit in my book at least. But you wanted to talk about this game really badly, so it's now time. Welcome to the NFL, Tua.
I said this, and I was completely correct. Wasn't wrong. If you watch Sunday's episode, I said Tua is not ready, and it was very apparent that he is not ready. This Dolphins defense carried him to a victory. 12 for 22 for 93 yards. He's not ready. Fitz magic come back in. He's got potential. Trust me, there was some of those throws that he did make were very accurate. Specifically, his first career touchdown pass was a dart in
Devontae
between
Parker.
two defensive guys. Obviously, it's a short pass, so But I mean, obviously, a 78-yard fumble return, an 88-yard punt return for a touchdown. I mean, you're gonna win that game no matter who you have a quarterback. But I think if you have Fitzpatrick in this game, I think it's a 40-17 affair. This offense did not really look that efficient. Um, Obviously, good for them. But you also got to look at it. I know he had jitters and stuff, but that first drive, sack fumble by Aaron. I mean, it's Aaron Donald. I understand that. It's a really good defense he's going up against. But if you look at it, the interception, he only had to go 33 yards to get his first touchdown. He fumbled. Obviously, he didn't fumble, but Miles Gaskin fumbled on their following possession. Um, and then the defense too huge, and then they punted. They got another fumble that they returned all the way to the 1 yard line where they scored on a Miles Gaskin run. I mean, obviously he didn't have to do much. He game managed, which is exactly what he did. Then he came out though. That second half though, I mean, all six of their drives ended in punts. I mean, he has potential, and I understand everybody saying the reason why they did this is because they have a plethora of picks. If they need to pick another quarterback, they have the ability to. But I do think that I just think that it's not to a time.
All right, but what about
Congratulations on your first win. You and your brother getting your first wins on the same weekend is a special moment that you guys will probably remember for your rest of your life. awesome. But I especially specifically uh, as a Bills fan, as this is the second place team, and obviously it's the clear second place team. I do obviously as long as they're not playing the Bills, root for them because we beat them. So it'll look credible if we beat them and they keep winning. So I really want them to succeed, so that makes us look better. But this team is not good with Tua, especially right now. Obviously, that was a really good defense he faced, but it's not Tua time. And I called that Sunday. I did think I picked the Rams to win that game, but obviously props to the defense of Miami for pulling it out.
And Aaron Donald must have missed that message about Tua starting because that first hit he had on him was man, he rocked Tua for that strip sack. I mean, that was vintage Aaron Donald. And I think like you mentioned on Sunday, this was probably the worst team to have him start against due to this outstanding pass rush. I mean, that front four in LA is probably one of the best in the league right now with Aaron Donald on the field. And when he's on the field, you have to double and triple team him, and he was still getting back to Tua repeatedly. And it's just, I think he would have been more efficient against a different team for this being his first start. But we'll see how this plays out. Future episodes down the line, we might be saying, "Hey, we called it that." David called it that this he might not be ready. We don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But as of right now, he is 1-0.
Yeah, and to follow that up, I do think that this would be a completely different story if they would have sat him this week and next week against a really good Cardinals team and started him against the Chargers, Broncos, and Jets. There's your 3 games of the season where you should be able to win. Your defense should be able to keep you in games, and that's where he should have started because then you can get a legit showing. I mean, you're playing the Jets, who you're going to play twice a year, so you'll see how he performs, and a young Broncos team who's going to be like and a young Chargers team. So all of which are young teams that you will be fighting with in the future. So I mean, I don't know. Obviously it worked out for him, but it was all defense, special teams. They gave Tua the ball with 20 yards to go, and he took advantage of it. I mean, credit. I'm not gonna knock him for the victory, but it's not Tua time. Fitzpatrick would have killed this Rams team.
Mm,
That second
agreed.
half efficiency was just not good, and that is a sign for concern. Obviously, good team, so we can't knock them completely. But anyway, enough knocking the Tagovailoa brothers. Let's move on to the next game.
So what's more important for this upcoming game? The 7-0 Steelers, or where did Lamar Jackson go?
I think is more of it's not necessarily where Lamar Jackson went. I do think it's how good that this Steelers defense actually is. Um, from the get go, obviously the you know 2 plays into the game, getting a pick six is always a good start for a defense. But I really do think that they were able to get after Lamar Jackson, contain him, specifically on the ground. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins finally had his breakout performance in regards of rushing yards. I mean, he basically doubled his rushing yards for the season. So I think that this is just a testament of how good this Steelers defense actually is.
Now, do we see J.K. Dobbins keeping up with this pace, or do you think this is just kind of a
I think this is a lack of Mark Ingram.
okay?
I think that if Mark Ingram comes back, I think some of the load will be off of him, and I think it'll go back to the Gus Edwards Mark Ingram tandem. J.K. Dobbins is definitely going to be a factor in the pass game, but it's going to be important 3 game or honestly 4 games. You have Colts. This is the Ravens, by the way. You have the Colts. Um, you have the Patriots, you have the Titans, and the Steelers again. So this is a very important 4 games because if you can, win 2 out of these, I mean, you're coasting. You got Cowboys, Browns, Jaguars, Giants, Bengals. You're coasting those last 5 games. So you just have to make it healthy through these next 3 games or 4 games. Go 2-2 at least. 3-1 would be honestly really good for this team. But you're looking at the wild card team in the AFC.
So I want to talk about just the Steelers' offense real quick because we know all about the Steelers' defense and what kind of pressure they bring to the game. But are we saying that this offense is just efficient enough to win football games, or is it? How do I want to say this? Because I mean, if we look at the stats, Roethlisberger threw for 182 and two touchdowns, no interceptions, had a QBR of 80. James Conner had 47 yards and one touchdown. Now, however, that offense also had three fumbles, and they lost one of them. So, with this being said, how does this offense? Do we expect this offense to get better, or are they good enough to just win games?
I mean, I would like to say that this is basically a clear cut copy. Um, maybe I mean they're better. They are better than this comparison, but I would say this is a really close comparison. Is I would compare them to the 2018 Bears. Their offense is good enough to win games, but their defense is going to win more games than their offense. Whether it is preventing points, making huge key stops, um, specifically, this game they were able to, um, stop the offense in a clutch situation when Lamar Jackson had a chance to lead them back to victory. Um, so I do think that I would compare them to the 2018 Bears, where Mitchell Trubisky was game manager and was able to, let the defense kind of basically win the game. Um,
True.
But yeah, but ultimately it is a bigger it's a bigger deal that the Steelers won this game than that the Ravens lost this game because the Ravens lost to a good Steelers defense. They're gonna have to play them again, so they just need to regroup and move on.
All right, and now probably the biggest coin flip of the day: Denver Chargers, and
Yes.
final, what a final 8 minutes. I think it was 8 9 minutes, almost 21 on it, 21 points.
I mean, who saw it coming? Oh wait, I saw it coming. Drew
Josh,
Lock
the
bringing it
Missouri
home.
product.
I know. And this was one of those coin flip games where it could have went either way. This was all. It seemed to be a lock for the. They did leave a little bit too much time on the clock with that last field goal. Obviously, it's just how it worked out. And they gave Drew Lock just enough time to you know score. And then I mean, I don't think you could have scripted it any differently at the end of the game. I mean, to to drive all the way down there to have a defensive pass interference on the last play. We're gonna put on the 1 yard line, and then not to run the ball, but to throw the ball on. I mean,
That reminds me of the Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl.
they definitely had a better play drawn up, though. I will say KJ Hamler was pretty open. Obviously, a huge second half comeback. A lot of people were counting him out when they're down 14-3 at half. So huge gut check for the Denver Broncos. And Drew Lock is, I'm telling you this. He, if they build around him and they give him pieces, obviously they are going to have to face this franchise, the dynasty that is the Chiefs. But he will be a solid quarterback. I'd like to compare him to possibly I mean, with the history of the Broncos, he could probably be a Matt Stafford, where he's a really good quarterback on a tough team, but they play in a tough division. Like the Lions have always played against, Kirk Cousins and the Vikings when they're good. I mean, they were a playoff team the last few years. The Packers and the Bears. I mean, you're looking at three really good teams. I mean, they have the Raiders. They've had the Chargers in the past. I mean, this is a really good division that is half young, half established. So it's going to be a tough road for them to make the playoffs and stuff. But Drew Lock is going to be a really good quarterback, and I think that he's definitely on the up.
It was a great game, and I mean, if I was going to lose a game, that would have been the game to lose because that literally could have gone either way. I mean, LA had it going into the fourth quarter, and then not taking credit away from Denver because they do owe it, but the collapse by this Chargers team. I mean, we've seen this countless times this year already. It just seems like they can't close these games out. I mean, Justin Herbert got him through, took that huge hit, came back in the game, and just didn't look the same. So I mean, kudos to Drew Lock and Denver for getting the job done. And but
I mean, and it looks like to me like this Chargers team is kind of understands where they're at this season with the teams who are above them, and I think they are playing for the future. With them trading away, All Pro punt returner, Desmond King to the Titans, and obviously they did sign a big free agent this year in Chris Harris, and he got hurt as well as I'm trying to remember. They lost another guy to injury early in the season, but they are regrouping, and I think that it is going to be a year before they really do anything huge. So you know, both of these teams are really at this point playing for pride and for paychecks at this point because both of these teams are pretty far out of the race.
right. But moving on to, well, the team that I said wasn't going to make the playoffs, to a team David thinks will contend for this final wild card
I,
spot.
I I said it was going to be a close game. The Saints were going to win. The Bears defense really held their own. They gave Nick Foles a chance to win. Ultimately, it wasn't enough. Um, I mean, it was a huge comeback. Down 10, they did make it close. Ultimately, that overtime, the play selection in overtime was definitely questionable in my opinion. Um,
I do think that the Saints team got lucky, and I know you're probably in your head going, "What is this dude talking about?" But I mean, here we go again. Alvin Kamara, 13 targets and 9 receptions. The next closest, Jared Cook, their tight end, with 7 and 5 receptions. So they still don't have that receiving core that they need to win these upcoming games because they have a tough schedule rest of the way through. Now, I'm not taking anything from the Bears defense because this Bears defense is still can compete with any team in the league. I just think the Saints squeaked by with this one. I mean, this offense did not look as good as they could have.
I mean, what do you expect from him? I told you Alvin Kamara was going to be the reason they won the game, and he was.
Yep.
I mean, this team was without Manuel Sanders, Michael Thomas, and Marquise Callaway. They're number one, number two, and number three receivers. I mean, Traquan Smith stepped up where they needed him to. Obviously he didn't have a huge game, but he did enough to help out the running game because they couldn't just hand the ball off 50 times. Um, but if
I'm
you
just
look
not ready to hop on this Saints bandwagon yet. That's all.
and you don't have to, but trust me, the Saints bandwagon will welcome you whenever you're wrong. Um, but I mean, Taysom Hill stepped up, made a really huge catch. I never seen a white boy get that wide open in the NFL on a pass. Ran virtually untouched in the end zone, and especially a former quarterback getting open like that. But with that being said, I knew this was going to happen. Saints looking forward for their schedule. I mean, they have a huge game against the Bucks, and they're going to have the AB Bucks. Um, it's going to be important for them to get healthy this week. We'll see how crazy they get. Um, I do like their side. I do like their trade that they did make, and I do think that Quan Alexander. Um, I do think that they understand that their window is limited, specifically with Drew Brees, and I don't think I think that they kind of understand that Jameis Winston may not be the heir. So I think that they are in win now mode before they have to pay some of these guys. So I think that it's going to be important for them. Quan Alexander is it's. I mean, he's established himself, had a really good career. So I don't think it's going to hurt him, and I think it's going to be a I don't think they really lost a whole lot with Kiko Alonso. Obviously, he's a talented player, but I think that they got the better end of this deal.
Yes, they did. But moving on to an NFC battle between the 49ers and the Seahawks.
Obviously, a huge news out of this
It
one
is
is
time to go back to play. Who is that quarterback for the 49ers?
yeah, right now it looks like Nick Mullins is the lead candidate. He had a fairly efficient day in relief for the injured Jimmy G, who it's looking like he might be having a. I mean, it's basically a season ender. Um,
And George Kittle is
George
out. Yeah,
Kittle is out as well. I was just going to say that. This team obviously devastated by injuries. A lot of people were like, "Oh, they're having a hangover," but it's really not on them. I mean, they lost a whole bunch of just injuries and everything. Somebody to watch for with this team. That they could look to possibly picking up. Um, a Vic Beasley. I know that he's kind of been
he was going to
struggling
be
in his 1 year.
released.
Yeah, he's going to be released. Tomorrow. He's basically told that he will. Um, Obviously, he has the issue with the being late to camp, and then they held him out, and he really hasn't lived up to the hype. So I mean, but you got to think that he was a member of that Atlanta defense that went to the Super Bowl, and I mean, he led the NFL in sacks. I mean, he has to be able to help a defense who really needs that. I mean, somebody's gonna have to step up and take the spot of Bosa, who they lost, and I think that this is potentially somebody who could step in and fill that spot. There's also a lot of other teams who could use him as well, so it'll be looking interesting to see if anybody picks up some of these, uh, you know, veteran players that are getting released right here.
Agreed. But I did say this on Sunday. I told you watch out for DJ Dallas. He was going to have a game. Tom Brady said it best, and this is the one thing that I respect Tom Brady for. He said, "If you get an opportunity to get on the field, make the most out of it because you may not get another opportunity." And DJ Dallas made the best of his opportunity. Um,
I mean, it was a decent day. I mean, for a four string running back, it was a good day.
Two
But
touchdowns,
unfortunately,
41 yards on the
I mean,
ground. I mean,
averaging 2.3 yards is not the best. Obviously the three catches or five catches, excuse me, kind of helped him if you're looking at him as in a fantasy sort of way. But I mean, it was a good game. I'm not knocking him for that. He did enough to help his team win. I mean, if he doesn't score those two touchdowns, they lose by 3 points, so or 4 points. So I mean, credit to him again, but don't go crazy. He didn't have a super breakout
oh,
game.
and I'm
He
not
did
saying
enough.
he's going to be the. I'm not going to say he's going to be the next
I
leading.
know, I understand. You said to watch
But
DJ Dallas, but I'm just saying it wasn't the crazy breakout game.
no.
How
How
about
about DK Metcalf though?
I know. I was about to say he is proving to really develop into one of the best receivers from that draft class in 2019, and it looked like they got a steal.
So
Everybody was like,
why was I
he's
stupid
too
enough?
big, he's slow, and I don't know about you, but watching him last week chase down Buda Baker, who had a 15-yard head start, pretty much he is a big old middle finger to all the people who said he was slow out of high or out of
Still don't know
college.
why I didn't draft him. I still that's gonna haunt me if I lose it. If I lose my leagues because I didn't draft DK Metcalf, it's
Well,
gonna
he's
haunt
one of
me.
those guys who was stayed off the radar. I mean, he had a pretty decent week, but
He
wasn't
can't stay
anything
off the
great.
radar anymore. But I mean, and once again, Brandon Ayuk, someone you talked about on Sunday, not a bad day overall. I mean, 91 yards and a touchdown. He's probably the lone bright spot of this 49ers offense right now. I mean, Jermichael Hasty filling in for Jeff Wilson Jr., who did not play. Ran the ball not that efficiently either. I mean, he had a 2.4 average rushing yards, but this offense is not. good enough to even make the playoffs, in my opinion.
No, and I think we've pretty much established that with Jimmy G going down. Obviously, Jimmy G has been kind of struggling this year, but I think that this pretty much pretty much knocks him out of playoff contention. They just need to get healthy and really look to next season as well. Another team that needs to get healthy, or they're gonna have to start looking towards the next season is Dem Boys um, down in Dallas.
Okay,
Losing.
you know,
I mean,
it's just a punching bag. It's just a punching bag every week now, and they do it to himself. That's all I can say.
I mean, started out high. Had the early lead. Going into halftime, and I really was like, all right, let's see. Hopefully, they can get the offense going in the second half because three field goals is never what you want. Um, huge 59-yard field goal right before half. Momentum seemed to be swinging their way. But then just this, the second half collapse. Um, it just
But I will say, Mister Ben DiNucci here he outthrew Carson Wentz in this game. I mean, that defense did hold Carson Wentz accountable for for two interceptions this game, and it wasn't that bad of a performance for this Dallas team. They just couldn't get anything started, and I think that their struggles are just going to continue. I mean, El- Ezekiel Elliott was basically non-existent. Michael Gallup finally got some receptions in a game, but they couldn't get. It seems to me that their playmakers perform opposite weeks of their other playmakers. They don't have coinciding good games to make these games closer. It's Elliott has a good game, but none of the receivers have a good game. Michael Gallup has a good game, but no Amari Cooper, CD Lamb, or Elliott. I mean, I guess give credit because the Eagles won, still first in the NFC East, but I don't know what to do with the Cowboys right now.
pile of trash,
All right,
d-
don't go.
dumpster fire full of trash. It's what if you look at the NFC East right now, that's just what it is. I mean, you said that he outperformed Carson Wentz, which isn't saying much this year. Carson Wentz is having a horrific year, regardless of him being in. And I think that this is just another reason why. I mean, if you look at it, I now me personally, obviously these are the years. You have these years where you're like, oh man, you know what it could be. But this is one of those years where it's looking like. I mean, it's still early. If they rattle off like 5 wins and get to 8-8 to finish out the year, or maybe eight, I guess 8, 7, and 1. But I mean, it's just it makes me wonder why the NFL wouldn't possibly think about developing something like say the NBA where they have the top 8 teams from a conference make it. Um, it's one of those years like it doesn't happen very often, but there's always a year, historically, in the past, those Rams and Seahawks teams that would make it 9-7, 8-8, that would just sneak into the playoffs because they're in a really bad division. The NFC West used to be horrible. I just think ultimately it's one of those years where it's like you're looking at a 7-9, 7-8-1 team, 8-7-1 team who's probably going to make the playoffs, and you're going to look at a 10-6. Um, I mean, ultimately, it's probably going to be a 10-6 Bears team that doesn't make the playoffs. Depending on if they beat the Packers in their two head-to-head matchups, obviously that could sway a little bit. But I mean, you're looking at some of these teams that are going to be snubbed from the playoffs, even though they have a way better record, and especially with the weird COVID year. I mean, hell, you should have just made it a top 6 and top 7 teams in each
Out
bracket.
of the
Just
conference instead of
yeah,
division
I
based.
mean, especially because you already added an extra wild
I
card
mean,
team, so you might as
that's actually
well.
that's not a bad idea. I mean, that looking hindsight 2020, yes, that's probably what should have happened.
And this is just like even if this didn't happen. You already added an extra team. At that point, you might as well you should have just made it the top 7 teams from each side and just whoever has the highest records in the conferences win. Because realistically, I mean, obviously, if the 49ers weren't decimated with injuries, you could have a scenario where all 4 of the NFC West teams could have made the playoffs. Like, they just straight up could have.
Would have been like the NL Central. Maybe none of them would have won their first playoff game either.
Exactly.
But not now comparing things. But what about this other NFC East team, the Giants taking it to Tampa?
Tampa, they got into a slow start. They overlooked this game. They're really looking to this matchup against the Saints. You can tell they want to get back at them. They're getting AB back. I'm not worried. I do think that the refs blew this game. I think it should have went to overtime. Um, they blew the 2-point conversion. I mean, that's if that's not defensive pass interference. I mean, I think that he probably could have filed for an assault charge with the amount of holding that he was getting on that play. So I do think that the refs blew it. I think that they really want Tom Brady to succeed, especially with the Patriots tanking. So I think they handed him this on a platter. Granted, I think that the Buccaneers probably would have won in overtime, but come on, give Danny Dimes a shot.
So what you're saying
Giants.
is so so
I
what
was
you're
just to
saying
say the
is
Giants are the kryptonite for Tom Brady.
Bill Belichick didn't pay the refs off. Tom Brady paid the refs off. And it's still continuing to this day that he's getting these calls that nobody else would ever get
I
those.
didn't say that, but I do think that they messed up bad, and I'm not the only one who thinks it. There's a lot of people who think that that was a blown call.
Yeah, I do. I yes, but it is nice to see that this Giants team does know how to play football. We haven't really seen it
I
this
mean,
season.
ultimately, the 2 picks by Daniel Jones was what lost them this game. But he's not the answer. We said that whenever he tripped on a 60-yard run.
The blade of grass tackles back in that Giants defense. But regardless, the outcome is what everybody expected: the Buccaneers beating the Giants. So that being said, that is our NFL wrap up of the week. Like we saw some big news coming out of this weekend. We saw a lot of people get hurt as well. The injury bug is still hitting. COVID is still hitting these teams hard. But now moving away from football, you want to talk about some of these MLB awards that came out?
Yeah, we have I specifically want to focus on just MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year. I think those are the really big ones specifically. Obviously the American League finalists. You got Jose Abreu, DJ LeMahieu, and Jose Ramirez. I really think this is Jose Abreu's year. The things that he did to make the White Sox a real legitimate competitor, and obviously with the weird playoffs, how it worked. I do think that this. I do think that he has a really good shot to win this. Personally, I think he should win this. But I want to hear your opinion on this one. Out of those three, who you got?
DJ LeMahieu, hands down, in my opinion. Not only did last year he finished fourth in the MVP race, he's a finalist again this year, and he had one of the best um, averages. Well, he had the best average in the major out of all the majors at 364, but his OPS was 1.011, which is the highest out of anybody who plays that position in 5 or 6 years. I think it's his race to lose. So now I'm not taking anything away from Jose Brady because uh, he also had hits. It's so weird to see these low RBI totals and forgetting that it was a shortened season. We're used to seeing 100 RBI, 100, 118 RBIs, but the thing I want to talk about the most is the total bases. Um, Jose Abreu led the majors in total bases out on hits, stolen bases, and everything, but his he came close to Luke Voigt in homers at 22. I just think LeMahieu's stats are probably a little bit better.
All right,
Don't give me that look.
let's move over to the NL side. You know, obviously you got Mookie Betts, Manny Machado, and Freddie Freeman. I think the big surprise is Manny Machado. A lot of people were upset that he was over Tatis on his team, as well as Marcelo Zuna for the Braves. I think a lot of people had him pitted as the fifth best player in the National League, and I think the name, obviously, he's an established name. That's why he's up there. There's two ways to look at it. Mookie Betts made the most out of his situation, and I think that people are going to take that into account. But I also think that you have an established guy who's been doing it year in and year out, and I think is really shown that he is possible to, he's the cornerstone of this Atlanta Braves team and Freddie Freeman that the sports fan in me wants Freddie Freeman to win, but I think Mookie Betts will ultimately win just based on how the season played out.
And I actually agree with you 100% on this decision. I think if the Dodgers did not win the Super Bowl, holy cow, I'm still thinking football. If the Dodgers did not win the World Series this year, Freddie Freeman would probably win the NL MVP award. But because the Dodgers won, I think Mookie Betts gets the MVP award. Not that the two, not that the World Series and MVP coincide with each other. I'm not saying that at all. But I think because of how the season ended up and shaped, that is the reason Mookie Betts will get this MVP.
All right, let's move to we'll stick in that side of things. Let's move to the Cy Young for the NL. You have Trevor Bauer, Jacob DeGrom, and Yu Darvish. A lot of people, in this race specifically, they did, they included Jacob DeGrom, but if you think about it, he's a really good player on a really bad team. This Mets team is definitely underachieving this year for what a lot of people thought. Um, Obviously, I'm a homer, and I really do. Like honestly, as a fan, I think it's going to be a real toss up between Darvish and Bauer. It could go either way, but I do think ultimately those two both have the edge over Degrom, specifically with their teams having success making the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. And I do give the advantage to you as a unbiased opinion. I do think that you just had a little bit of a better year than Trevor Bauer, but it could go either way, in my opinion.
Mm, I think I think the bounce back from Trevor Bauer this year is the reason he's going to win Cy Young. Last year when he was traded to the Reds, he went down the stretch and looked terrible. He won a total of 2-7 with a 6.39 ERA in 10 starts. Um, but this season he came out, he led the league, he led the majors with an 1.73 ERA and struck out 100 batters over 73 innings. And something else that it really struck me as dominant is he allowed one run in 8 of his 11 starts while striking out at least 12 batters. That is basically a trend of dominance that I don't think we haven't seen that out of Yu Darvish, and we definitely haven't seen that out of Jacob DeGrom. And I think that stat right there is the reason he wins the Cy Young.
And like I said, it's a toss up in my opinion. I think it could go either way. So
I also don't want to see a Chicago Cub win anything, but that's just my biased opinion. But Yu Darvish had a phenomenal year. I will say that he is one of the big reasons why the Cubs made it to the playoffs.
all right, let's flip it. AL. I think there's only one choice. I think we're probably both going to agree. While Kenta Maeda had a really, and Hong Jin Yu had a really good year, I think that this is
Going with the
Shane
Beavs.
Bieber's year. I think we both agree on that. I think he just had it's a pretty easy pick. I mean, he did set the franchise record for opening day start, and he just started off on a good foot, and it went. I mean, he just coasted this year. However, Ryu, I think it would be if I had to pick a second place, it would be you, and then Kenta Maeda would bring it in with the third. Honestly, I think Maeda could have been replaced by, say, a Dallas Keuchel for the White Sox. In that spot, I think that
I would have
Dallas
thought like a
Keuchel had.
Sunny. I thought would have thought like a Sunny Gray type.
See, I didn't even think Sonny Gray. I like specifically. Obviously he's good, but I think in the power index, I don't even think he cracked the top 10. Sonny Gray didn't. Um, but Kenta Maeda fell at number 5 in the power index behind Lance Lynn and Dallas Keuchel. So kind of one of
Lance
those.
Lynn,
Yeah.
staple for the Cardinals.
But another person, obviously, who's his regular season wasn't as good as his postseason was Garrett Cole. Obviously, he didn't make the finalists. Really, so fortunately for Yankees fans. But yes, I think we're both in agreement. It's Bieber. Um, Now for the fun one. I always love it. I love the young guys coming out, showing what they're made of. Who you got? AL Rookie of the Year.
AL, we see. See, this is a tough one. I think it'll go Luis Robert, Kyle Lewis, Christian Javier. So I'm taking Luis Robert from the White Sox.
Luis.
Luis.
Yeah, you just combined two names.
I
Well,
did.
Kyle Lewis is a different guy. But
I mean,
so you're taking Luis from the
yeah.
White Sox? I think you White Sox, right? I don't
Hmm.
want to say the wrong team. Yes, I do. He had a really good season. I think that Kyle Lewis will probably win it from the Mariners. I know that obviously with Rookie of the Year, I don't think it's as much of a team necessarily. Accolade per se. And I really think that I'd like to state this for all of these awards. I think that the pitchers got screwed in the shortened season because I think if you had a full season, there's no doubt in my mind that Brady Singer, for the Kansas City Royals as a pitcher, he is in contention for this award, and he is probably going to win this award. Ultimately, his starts, you just don't start enough games um, as a pitcher. Um, so you like and especially with like the MVPs, you can't compete for pitching as a pitcher um because you don't have enough starts. Because I mean, if you look at the power index for some of these leagues, I mean, you Darvish is the number 3 behind Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts for the MVP race. And then in the AL side, you actually have Shane Bieber who's sitting at the top of the MVP race. He just didn't have enough starts to win the MVP. So, ultimately, I think that especially these rookies who get hurt with it, specifically, like I think Brady Singer deserves it. He's really done stuff with a really bad Kansas City team that has given them hope for the future. But I think Kyle Lewis ultimately gets it done in the AL.
Okay.
And I just don't think, like I said, the pitching. I don't think that for the Houston relief pitcher Christian Javier, I just don't think he pitched enough.
That is. mm, Yeah, and I agree that pitchers did get screwed because I think we could have seen a lot more. We could have seen records being broke this year with how on fire these pitchers were. But moving on to the NL Rookie of the Year, you have Alec Bohm, Jake Cronenworth, and Devin Williams. Who's your take?
I like the kid. I like Devin Williams a lot. I did get to watch him play. Um, this season with him being in the with him being in the Central. I did get to watch him play the Cubs twice. Late in the season. As well as I believe he made his debut against them. Again with the pitching, he's a relief pitcher. He just doesn't see. I like him, especially he's from Florissant, Missouri, so pretty close to home. I just think that this ultimately goes to a player who made an impact more than just in 20 games this season. I like Cronenworth just because he did produce in the playoffs and he did have an opportunity to play in the playoffs. I give him the slight edge. Um, over Alec Baum, but Alec Baum was also on a Phillies team that was underperformed for their standards.
And it seems to be the trend right now with some of these higher payroll teams are just under. We talk about the Dodgers having the highest team salary and winning, but there's a lot of teams that spend a lot of money that don't win, like the Yankees. The Red Sox have a high salary cap. The Phillies obviously do, and this just happens to be one of those times where being on this team doesn't help you. So
I
I
mean, and I mean this year's no knock. It's no knock on Alec Baum. Huge. Finished fifth place in batting average. With a minimum of 35 games played. That's a huge accomplishment, especially for a rookie. Regardless, and he's gonna have a bright future with this team. Especially with the young core that they're trying to build there. So, no knock to him. I just do think that with the postseason experience, I think you kind of got to give um, you have to kind of give a little bit of a nod to um, Cronenworth. So and Devin Williams, obviously, I mean, if they do see and they look, he wasn't a really strong reliever. I mean, it's possible. I've seen crazier things happen.
This is true. All right, and I just want to run down through manager of the year. We don't have to give our takes because I'm pretty sure just by hearing these names, you will have an idea of who's going to win. So for the AL finalists is Kevin Cash from Tampa, Charlie Montoyo from Toronto, and Rick Renteria, ironically, from the Chicago White Sox. And then from the NL, it is this one's a little bit tougher in my opinion. Don Mattingly from Miami, David Ross from Chicago, and Jace Tingler from San Diego.
This is way easier than the other one is. This is very clearly Don Mattingly. The fact that he was able to make a playoff team that was able to defeat a really established team in the Chicago Cubs, all while fighting a pandemic that basically wiped out his team in the first few weeks. This is definitely a Don Mattingly's award. It's definitely his. And then on the other side, I mean, I think obviously you got to give it to Kevin Cash what he did with Tampa when nobody really thought they were going to do, especially in that division. So I think these are both really easy picks.
So, well, maybe on Wednesday we'll go over a little bit of the Gold Glove. We'll talk a little bit Gold Glove conversation. See if we any players you think got snubbed or what's your overall opinion about how these awards got handed out. But other than that, I think we are all set today.
Yeah, we will try to keep everybody posted with, uh free agency and all the sports, any acquisitions that are made. Um look for some Antonio Brown news coming up later this week, I'm sure, as we get closer
And
to
don't be
that.
so worried about picking him up immediately when he comes on the waiver wire. Just let it ride for a week or two, see how he clicks, then decide. Don't just pick him up because remember that's a roster spot for everybody. You gotta think about that.
And we will see you tomorrow. Don't forget to tune in on Thursday for episode 2 of Head to Head, hosted by our stats guy Corey K. So with that being
Shout out
said,
to
we're gonna
Corey.
we're gonna let you go. Um,
Enjoy the rest of your beautiful Tuesday. I mean, this weather is gorgeous. Might be the last good week of the year before we start getting miserably cold weather because it is Missouri after all. Well, David's in Texas, but he still gets this kind of weather as well.
and as you can see here in the back, I did not choose this background. This was chosen for me. I am a pro Thanksgivinger.
It's a little
So
too early to be celebrating Christmas just yet.
it's the background that was chosen for me. I apologize to all the viewers out there. But anyway, we're gonna let you go. Enjoy your day.
Take
Peace.
it easy.